It strikes me, just to start, that the actual comments of the travellers and what the traveller organisations do, that's really valuable information from this. Because when you look at Department of Health, HSE, mental health services, they're by and large based upon what you'd call like national statistics. And what stands out for me immediately is that when you look at the suicide rate, say, among travellers, it cries out for something specific for travellers. What may be relevant and the insights from the travellers community that this Seamus has brought out, but that can be possibly, in a sense, transported to many different minorities. And what may be really valid in a travelling context may well be really valid in several other ethnic minority groups. So I think that's been hugely useful here. So maybe other people would like to comment on that aspect of like the number one topic there from the ethnic minority perspective.
Oh, you're looking at me. Travellers don't like to talk about suicide. You'd find that an awful lot more people have had young people who have just died or said it was an accident or something like that, rather than admitting that it was suicide that caused it.
But I think there's also a very big stigma about seeking help. And in fact, it often struck me that possibly our energy should be addressing the stigma about seeking help. And in that way, in a sense, because I think of you clearly with stigma and suicide, it's an important issue.
A lot of the time, travellers don't know that there are services, and then where is the service? I know that many of the organizations and the state bodies, they produce materials, but they forget that the travellers don't have, as Geraldine has mentioned, the literacy, low level of literacy. So can they read and write? The materials are there, but can they read and write?
And we engage directly with travellers on the ground. So there's 16 women in our group, and we go out to different areas around Finglas and Blanchetown. And I think we deal with about almost 300 families. And obviously amongst those families there's people who have experienced suicide.
It's my first time to understand the starkness of the statistics in relation to traveller suicide, and that's because of the ARC project and the collaborative nature of the work, and because we're all around this table having this conversation. And to me, what Lived Lives is about is making something that is profoundly invisible in our society visible to us and to everyone who has stepped into this space. And that's a very powerful act. It's a very powerful thing to do, and it's a very powerful thing to witness. When you look in that room, the question is to be asked of the society. What is society's responsibility to this? And how does a project like Live Lives make a dent?
I was saying about the hope of this whole initiative, and the fact that it's about lives. There's a lot of research, a lot of study into what works, what brings about change in health services, in organisation of health services. And we know now a lot about what doesn't work. And what doesn't work is the sort of the big grand national gesture. Okay, that doesn't work. And even the local but grand gesture with the great and the good, dare I say it, maybe the kind of the governmental initiative that might be from time to time, doesn't work. But what does work is small groups of people making changes locally where it matters. And you can harness the lived lives and their energy to make local change, so long as you know, as long as we all remember, I include myself in this, how significant small local change is.
Loads of people on the ground doing work, making small changes here and there. But when you have a government that has spent for as long back as I can remember, and as any of my family be able to remember, have spent time and time again trying to assimilate travellers into settled society, trying to fix what they call the broken people.
When your position is always as the other, to break that kind of scenario in a society which is so strongly male-dominated is incredibly difficult. But it also is when you start to deal with those issues of power. You're always put in a place where you are constantly in a vulnerable position.
We try at all different levels to engage with different policymakers, and we try and engage with the government. We try and engage all over, try and basically work together. But when you're hit constantly with wall after wall, why is that happening? It must be the travellers' fault. Surely to God, it couldn't be the government. It couldn't be the fact that the funding has been cut. It couldn't be the fact that people are getting discriminated just because of where they're coming from. It couldn't be the fact that you get a job and they find out you're a traveller and that they nearly force out. Couldn't be any of those reasons.
No.
Because no, it must be, it's the travellers, they're doing it to themselves basically.
We want to do something about it, but resources are limited.
We got a new engine though this time around, and that was from the Wellcome Trust, and that was a rocket boost that gave us independence, gave us the permission to navigate, I think, in a more courageous, bolder way.
But this acknowledges that this kind of work requires that level of support, and it's a message about the seriousness of the work, and it speaks to its capacity and its potential to speak back to any number of policymakers in relation to the rigour of its research process.
There's an awful lot that the government, to be honest with you, could be doing to help with traveller suicide, because it's, as I was saying earlier, it's at a stage now basically where it's a crisis. It's not just that another person is dying. One person is too many to be dying by suicide, but there's not enough being done.
One of the
Taking up Kathleen's point, I like this notion that out of a crisis like this, that actually the travellers took a lead, that someone and a health worker in the Maori or in the Aboriginal or in the Inuit community goes, look at how this was dealt with by this community, engaging art, science in a kind of a new experiment, if you like, in a new way.
I think collaboration is often the way to move things forward. Because,
I agree with you.
Because when you look at the sort of isolation, a lot of the work too on suicide looks at how, in a sense, how being detached, being in a sense separate is a real risk factor. And if you think of the travelling community in an Irish context, the travelling community is detached, like
Isolated.
It's isolated, and I think a collaboration and trying to get, in a sense, like advocates, not just in the travelling community, but I think that collaboration, if that happens, then that achieves, I think, political change in that.